Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Jai Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Brajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Vrajaka Ashtotar the Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai. ISKCON BBT founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Vrajaka Ashtotar the Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavini ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, just give me a second here. On this 23rd day of October, 2023 in San Diego. We're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in chapter 2 entitled Contents of the Gita Summarized, page 124, text 58. Yada Sangharate Chayam Kurmo Anganiva Sarvashaha Indriyanindriyartebhyas Tasya Pragya Pratishtita Yada Sangharate Chayam Kurmongani Vasarvashaha Indriyanindriyartebhyas Tasya Pragya Pratishtita Yada Sangharate Chayam Kurmongani Vasarvashaha Indriyanindriyartebhyas Tasya Pragya Pratishtita Yada Sangharate Chayam Kurmongani Vasarvashaha Indriyanindriyartebhyas Tasya Pragya Pratishtita Yada Sangharate Chayam Kurmongani Vasarvashaha Indriyanindriyartebhyas Tasya Pragya Pratishtita. And another. Yada Sangharate Chayam Kurmongani Vasarvashaha Indriyanindriyartebhyas Tasya Pragya Pratishtita. Bhakti Chad, you there? Anyone online? Guess not. Yada, when, Sangharate, winds up, cha, also, ayam, he, kurmaha, tortoise, angani, limbs, iva, like, sarvashaha, altogether, indriyani, senses, indriya, artebhyaha, from the sense objects. Tasya, his, pragya, consciousness, pratishtita, fixed. Translation. One who is able to withdraw his senses from sense objects, as the tortoise draws its limbs within the shell, is firmly fixed in perfect consciousness. Purport. The test of a yogi, devotee, or self-realized soul is that he is able to control the senses according to his plan. Most people, however, are servants of the senses and are thus directed by the dictation of the senses. That is the answer to the question as to how the yogi is situated. The senses are compared to venomous serpents. They want to act very loosely and without restriction. The yogi, or the devotee, must be very strong to control the serpents, like a snake charmer. He never allows them to act independently. There are many injunctions in the revealed scriptures. Some of them are do nots, and some of them are do's. Unless one is able to follow the do's and the do nots, restricting oneself from sense enjoyment, it is not possible to be firmly fixed in Krishna consciousness. The best example, said herein, is the tortoise. The tortoise can at any moment wind up its senses and exhibit them again at any time for particular purposes. Similarly, the senses of the Krishna conscious persons are used only for some particular purpose in the service of the Lord, and are withdrawn otherwise. Arjuna is being taught here to use his senses for the service of the Lord, instead of for his own satisfaction. Keeping the senses always in the service of the Lord is the example set by the analogy of the tortoise who keeps the senses within. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Salakaya Chakshu unmiditam mena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance to him and all members of Sri Parampara, the disciplic succession. So, if we go back to text 54, we'll find Arjuna asks this question about the stita pragya. Stita pragya means, O Krishna, what are the symptoms of one whose consciousness is thus merged in transcendence? How does he speak and what is his language? How does he sit and how does he walk? So here's the stita pragya at the very beginning of Arjuna's question, which is echoed in Krishna's answers. One who's, the stita pragya means the intelligence fixed, like we've heard of the yogi in samadhi. So that's what's being described here. Om jnana timirandasya jnanandjana shalakaya chakshu unmiditam mena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So Krishna is known as Rishikesha. Does anyone know what that means? Antonella, you've heard it before. Okay. Rishika means senses, is the word for senses. Isha means Lord, master. He's the master of all the senses, meaning that in our perfect situation here in the material world, we come to realize that these senses that we have are not meant for sense gratification. That they're really Krishna senses. They should be used for his purpose. Just as we're using our eyes and our speaking ability and our intelligence now to study the Bhagavad Gita. So this is the kind of thing that Krishna wants us to do. Whereas if we try to use the senses, because the whole point is we have forgotten our relationship with God. We've forgotten our relationship with Krishna. And the reason we forgot is because we wanted to be independent. We wanted to try to be enjoyers of this world rather than servants of Krishna. Now, servants of Krishna sounds, well, as soon as you hear that and you don't understand it, well, what about me? I mean, am I only be a servant? How does that work? You know? But the fact of the matter is, this is a wholesome state. And the example, I just heard this on a tape, probably do this story all the time. The senses once went on strike. You know, they went on strike. We're working so hard. We're, using our legs to go here and there, the hands to do all this work, and then we get some money, buy some food, and we put it in the mouth and in the stomach. It's the enjoyer. And the stomach is just sitting there. It's not doing anything. And it enjoys everything. We're going on strike. So the senses went on strike. They wouldn't do anything. So basically you just sit at home, lie in bed. You can't eat. And all the senses became weak. Because the way it works is you eat food and all of the energy is put through the blood and it goes to the senses. So they finally realized that's not going to work, this strike. Our only way that we can be alive and active and healthy is by working hard to feed the stomach. So in that analogy, Krishna is the stomach. In other words, he's the enjoyer, but we are also enjoyers in that relationship. This is the thing that makes it so amazing, is that really in Krishna consciousness, you enjoy most when you forget all about your own enjoyment. When you do things like glorifying Krishna, chanting his name. The ego says, well, what about me? Why don't you chant my name? And so many politicians, right? They're getting pleasure, people chanting, let's go X, let's go X. I'm not going to give any names. But there's a certain ego thing going on there, right? And why are people doing that? Because they feel that if they elect this person, they'll get something from it. It's all a selfish deal. He's getting adulation and position and money, and you're getting some of what you want because, you think that his or her policies will help you. So there's nothing devotional about it. The basic principle is ego, is our own benefit. So Krishna consciousness means, just the example here of the tortoise, is that everyone knows the tortoise withdraw. I think it's basically a defensive crouch, isn't it? I mean, when there's some danger, if you just come in, you got that shell, and you're protected. They can't get in the shell. Okay, try something. But the idea is that the senses, if there's not available way that a sense can be engaged in Krishna, then that sense is not active. Well, on the material plane, though, is that we're always searching for ways that all our senses can be satisfied. We want to see things that'll please us. We want to taste things, touch things, hear, right, music. Each of those senses has a way of being used in Krishna service, especially beginning with the ears, right? You hear, like, for instance, the Mahabharata. The Mahabharata can be read as like, especially in its abridged form, as an exciting novel. You know, we just had, today, by the way, is the actual anniversary of Ram's victory over Ravana. We celebrated it a couple of weeks earlier because of the schedule. Saturday is always a good day for everyone to come out. But the point is that Ravana, you know, is an example of what is described in the 16th chapter, which is the demonic nature. Most of the Gita is, there's so many ways of describing the qualities you want to have: self-control, you know, humility, pridelessness. There's a whole list in chapter 13 of things. But in 16, he's giving the other ones. You know, he's giving the divine and demonic qualities. The divine, and then there's demonic qualities, mostly on the demonic qualities. So the demonic qualities, Krishna, he pretends to be a demon in there, and he gives a little mantra. You know, one of the mantras is, Ishvaroham aham bhogi siddhoham balavan sukhi. I am the master, Ishvaroham. I am the enjoyer, aham bhogi. Siddho, I am perfect. Balavan, powerful. And Sukhi, happy, perfect, powerful, and happy, a master of everything, you know. This is, right? Remind you a lot of people, you hear about it? Yeah, okay. You know. The thing is, as the ages go by, we're in the Kali Yuga now, and the Kali Yuga, these lower qualities become more prominent. The modes of nature, lower modes of nature. We read chapter 14, and we see as you get in the mode of passion and mode of ignorance, you know, greed and lust and uncontrollable desire, you become more powerful in your personality. In the mode of ignorance, anger especially, self-destruct, you'll do things that you wouldn't ordinarily do, and then, you know, the rest of your life you could regret it. So that means the intelligence has been taken over by the lower self, by the lower modes. And so in Krishna consciousness, we systematically try to cultivate the mode of goodness and do things that will nourish our higher self, if you will. Generosity, kindness, empathy, and all of those can be dovetailed and perfected in Krishna consciousness. For instance, this idea of helping humanity. Many people have that impulse, even without any reference to God, even, or with even any reference to Krishna. And they'll work hard to feed people who are hungry and, you know, raise money so they can get some housing or whatever, orphanages, you know. And this is good, this is goodness. And that kind of good karma can result in them getting a higher birth or getting, you know, in the next birth they're better. But that's not basically what Krishna consciousness is about. But that impetus to help others, just like this Bhagavad Gita. As you may know, this book has been printed in so many different languages. It's being sold all over the world. Srila Prabhupada wrote it with great effort. He stayed up late at night and, you know, really worked hard to get it printed and published when he had little money and few followers, actually. I had the great privilege of helping on this book to a little bit, a degree anyway. So why did he work so hard? Just because he's serving Krishna by doing it, and Krishna's motive is to help us. He speaks this for Arjun's benefit, and through Arjun for everyone's benefit. Now, why is it for our benefit to read this? Well, we learn in the Bhagavad Gita how you can live in such a way that you can miraculously, if you will, conquer over birth and death. The first lesson is that we are in the middle of a cycle that we've been going through for who knows how many births, of birth, death, old age, and disease. Let me put it in order. Birth, old age, disease, and death. That's usually birth, old age, disease, and death. Of course, disease can come at any time. But the idea is that there's birth and there's death, and in the middle is old age and disease. Sometimes it's just disease or injury or whatever. But somehow or other, we've all taken birth, and anything that takes birth, including this earth, including this universe, eventually is destroyed. It's just the nature of time. It destroys everything. So we don't realize that. We forget. You come into this world, you grow up, and you think you don't know anything, right? If you're not taught. And so this idea of we're eternal souls. Haribo, Mark. See you. So we need to be enlightened what our real situation is. If we're going to work in such a way for our benefit, or for anyone's benefit, we need to know what's what. Would you like to sit? We can give you a book. You all right? Yeah, just take a book. Or seat. Yeah, fine. So knowledge is all important. Just like this COVID thing that happened, right? I hope I don't want to get into a whole debate about it, but assuming, just for argument's sake, that there really was a workable vaccine and that it helped to avoid the disease, I was working on that assumption. And you have the page 324. So the fact that so much knowledge went into producing the vaccine, right? And those who, to my mind anyway, were fortunate enough to believe in the vaccine and then actually take the vaccine. And at least according to the news reports I read, that helped many people avoid at least a serious case of COVID. It mitigated it if you got it, and it often helped you not to get it at all. So just see the benefit of knowledge. I remember when I was a kid, I was growing up and I was aware, I was like 5, 6 years old, 7, before there was a polio vaccine. Every summer the mothers were freaking out, because the kids were getting this polio and they would become crippled. They would lose their ability to walk or something, And but then first I think it was Salk and then Sabin. There were two who came up with a vaccine. And I remember lining up. My mother was taking me to a clinic, and we were on a big long line and we got the vaccine. I think by the time we got it, I was oral. You weren't getting a shot, actually oral vaccine, which is a big help with little kids, So that was a tremendous boon. He worked hard to get it together, and finally, he was able to produce a vaccine, and so much pain was avoided. Very rarely hear some kids get polio or something anymore, at least in the United States. So that was a clear case in which knowledge developed something that could alleviate a whole lot of suffering. So this is the same thing. We have a vaccine. The main vaccine is the holy name. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare. There's no pain. You don't have to inject it. It's free to everybody. And what's the value of it? Okay, let's count the ways. The first thing, and that's emphasized here at the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, and is that it eradicates whole lifetimes worth of karma, bad karma and good karma. We don't even know. The subtle laws of nature is that when you do something in this world, if it's not pure devotion, there's a reaction, good or bad, meaning that it's going to go into your karmic record, and if it's good, you've been kind to somebody you sacrificed, that's a good thing. Then your next birth, then you'll be born like in a, silver spoon in the mouth or whatever, You'll have good things will happen to you. Intelligence, beauty, all these things. There's 4 basic good karmas categories. So, and we're accumulating that karma. It may not actually appear in one lifetime, but be spread over several lifetimes. This is the first lesson of Krishna. You have to accept, for it to make sense, is that in one sense it's very exciting. Nobody dies. Nobody dies. The jayate mrite vakadachan. There is no birth or death at any time for the soul. So we have to understand that this is who we are. This body that we have is like a very complex machine. It's and as we all know, we're old enough to know that sometimes things go wrong with the machine. You have an accident. It's been a few years now, I got this serious ankle sprain. Completely unexpected. I'm taking a walk, and I foolishly tried to step off the curb, and I stepped into a ditch, and I was lucky not to break the ankle the way it is. And for like more than a month, I wasn't able to walk. I couldn't even come to the temple. And finally I was able to walk with a cane. You know, I came to the temple, but I couldn't take my walks. I tried, it was painful, you know, like. So it was a whole process of healing, as sometimes it happens. Probably we're all old enough to have something like that happen. So I was reminded of something that we always know, that the body is very fragile. Anything can go wrong. You know, accident, disease, some crazy person, who knows what. It's a hazardous place. Because the body is, after all, delicate. There's so many things have to happen, you know, right for it to function properly. So you can forget that you know, there's danger at every step. There's a verse like that. So, and then, inevitably, whatever hopes you place, okay, I'm going to do this, I'll marry this person, you know, we'll have to, you kind of carve out a little hope of happiness in this world. But even if you succeed, which is rare in these days, it's bounded by time. Eventually, you know, you have to leave the situation, or the situation leaves you, right? Your kids grow up and go away, and they forget about you. You know, oh my God, you know, I love them so much. It's just disappointment. And so that's material life, and all of these living beings we have. You know, there's so many bugs, so many plants, so many trees, so many animals, fish. Every one of those units is a soul, just like us. They're a conscious being called the Atma, irreducible. And that means that we're part and parcel of God, of the Supreme Conscious Being. And we have a relationship with that God. But we, who are in the minority of all the souls, most of them are still in the spiritual world, we've forgotten. We wanted to forget so we could be independent enjoyers. That's the whole problem. So Krishna consciousness means learning about our actual situation and then doing the prescribed things that have been worked out as a plan to reawaken ourselves to our actual identity, which is that we are in our natural, happy, peaceful condition when we're Krishna conscious, we're conscious of God, and we're doing whatever we can to serve Him. Then we're actually peaceful. And here's how it works. We're part and parcel of Krishna. He's the Supreme Person, full consciousness, and His body, His being is Satchidananda. There's this big famous verse from the Brahma Samhita Prabhupada. Ishvara Parama Krishna, Satchidananda Vigraha, Anadir Adir Govinda, Sarvakarana Karanam. It succinctly describes Krishna's ontological position. So, the first thing is He's an Ishvara, He's a controller. We're also controllers. We may have an apartment, we have a car, we have a little bank account, you know, we have a certain realm of minute control in this material world, you know. But He's the Parama Ishvara. Parameshvara means the supreme controller. He's in control of everything, which is, you know, it's inconceivable that everything in the universe is under the control of this conscious being, but that's the way it is. He expands into every atom. There's no place where He's not. Every atom is holding its position and doing its function because the Supersoul is there. He's in everyone's heart. He knows. He's giving us knowledge, He's giving us remembrance, He's giving us forgetfulness. Where would we be without that forgetfulness? Could you imagine remembering all those other lives, being eaten by a lion, falling off a cliff, going through so many diseases? Oh, just to think about it. What a blessed forgetfulness, isn't it? Someone who goes through a trauma in this life and they suffer the PTSD, they know how valuable it is to be able to forget. So, but the problem with forgetting is that we're going to make the same mistake again. And we keep doing things contrary to our real nature, trying to be false controllers and enjoyers separately, and in doing so, ensuring another birth. You see, this idea of birth, old age, disease, and death, there's nothing pleasant about that. We forgot, blessedly, what it was like to be in the womb. Couldn't have been a very happy situation, you know? But there we were, you know? And being born, and then, you know, all the things that go. So there's so many sufferings that we have to go through just to have this material body. But to be reinstituted or returned to our actual nature, purely spiritual world, where there's no old age, there's no disease, and there's no death. Now, how can we believe in this? Can't believe me. I'm basically like you. I don't remember it. I don't know it. But we can believe the great acharyas. We can believe the great souls. There is no reason, just by logic, there's absolutely no reason for Srila Prabhupada to leave the comfortable situation in Vrindavan that he had. He was highly honored. He was situated in one of the holiest places, of the world, the Radha Damodar temple, where all the Goswamis would come and they would write their literatures. There was a nice library there, and he could have just, as most of his godbrothers did, pass away there and go back to Godhead. But he had a mission that was given to him by his spiritual master, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, to take this knowledge and give it to those who never heard it before, basically those in the West. And Bhaktisiddhanta had already sent some of his disciples, Prabhupada's godbrothers, to England. They were supported by all kinds of money. A special book was written about Lord Chaitanya in English by one of Bhaktisiddhanta's highly skilled disciples in English. And all these facilities, but they couldn't do anything. They couldn't make any headway, and they came back. This was, before Prabhupada left. But Bhaktisiddhanta said that one of you, and he's looking right at Prabhupada, there's a famous meeting, one of you will succeed in doing this, will take this, and this, So Prabhupada, just visualize, here he is, he's 68, almost 69, not the greatest health. He'd been preparing this. He had published finally his first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the great Srimad Bhagavatam, A great effort. He was working alone and everything. So he had those books in, a few hundred sets of 3. And he had a free passage. He was able to, this nice Vaishnava lady in Bombay, she was the head of a steamship line. Actually, it was a shipping line. It wasn't commercial traveling. It wasn't the cruise line or anything, And Prabhupada, he finally, she said, no, you can't go. I'm not going to give it to you. You'll just die over there, So Prabhupada had a sit-in. He sat down. There's a picture, a photograph, black and white, of him sitting in front of her office, chanting Hare Krishna, kind of a sit-in, Finally, she invited him in and said, okay, I'll give you. She's a very pious lady. Sumati Morarji, her name is. So here he had his free passage. He had his okay from the government to go, passport. He had one sponsor in Pennsylvania, in western Pennsylvania, who was, there was a couple there, and the son had a father who was a very pious Vaishnav. And he would sponsor, he would agree to sponsor various sages, Vaishnav sages, to go. And they accepted it, but none of them actually ever went before. His son would say, okay, and so that you can come into America. You had to have a place to stay there when you put on the street in New York, So he had that place, but he had no money. He had like $7, Imagine going to India. Go to India with $7, and no, you don't know where you're going to stay. Imagine. At age 68, Anyway, Prabhupada turned 69 on the boat, but he had 2 heart attacks on there, and the third one, he said he figured he would be gone. But Krishna came to him in a dream. He said, "Don't worry, I'm going to take charge of the boat," And then it was a smooth sailing in the Atlantic in September. That's hurricane season, and the wife of the captain, she was traveling with him, And she joked when they landed in Boston first before he came to New York. And she said, Swamiji, can you please come back on our return journey? We never had such a calm trip as that. So it was such a heroic and incredibly courageous thing to do. And so these are the words of that same person. And realized, the point is he had become realized. He had followed and chanting 64 rounds a day and living the life in sannyas. And so the point is there has to be some faith, because if you put your faith, this is the problem. You have to put your faith in something in this world just to live. I like to give the obvious example. You're driving down Grand Avenue, as I have many times. And the light has just turned green. Oh, that's good. All right, step on the accelerator. I can go 35 miles an hour, 40 miles an hour. Well, you have absolute faith that the one perpendicular is red, right? You know, all the time. You can't live in this world at all, you know, without having faith. I remember, I don't know if some of you remember, this is many years ago, but it was while I was a devotee, 25, 30 years ago. There was some crazy person got into bonds or someplace, you know, and I think the whole time they unscrewed the tops. I think before they have these safety tops, and put in some poison pills that looked just like Tylenol pills, and then screwed them back up. And somebody took in, you know, and a couple of people died, you know, and there's like a big goal. You know, you have to have faith that, you know, when you put the broccoli into the steamer, that it hasn't been poisoned. In other words, we have to have faith. So, but the most auspicious faith is if you have faith in these words. If you have faith and if you try it, see, this is Lord Chaitanya's wonderful thing. You just try the chanting and you'll feel something. You'll feel peaceful. You'll feel happy. The more that you concentrate on that sound, this is the key, you know. Oh yeah, I chanted, you know, I tried it. Yeah, but where was your mind at? You know, if you really try to hear the sound of that mantra, even if you don't know what it means, but we know what it means. It's, you know, names of God, names of Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. That sound is so potent that it will plant the seed of faith in your heart. There's something here, so that let me investigate it. That's how I started. I was doing Hare Krishna. I just took the mantra as my meditating mantra. I didn't really know much about it, you know, but it was such a mantra. I said, let me find out what's going on with this one. I got a book, you know, Teaching of Lord Chaitanya. That's what really got me. You should read that book. So here, Krishna is describing how we have to, you know, when we think about it, the senses are always demanding this and that. But if we're able to control them by engaging them in Krishna's service, just trying to suppress doesn't really work. You know, the genius of Lord Chaitanya's movement, the chanting and dancing, which is inherently attractive, you know, and then when you get a little tired, you sit down and it's a feast. And the cooking, oh my God, you know, Prabhupada was cooking the feast at the beginning. He was cooking the Sunday feast back in 1966. And the devotees who had those feasts, they just, oh, you know, there's nothing like it. So that's part of it. There's all these cooking skills, and you offer it to Krishna. It becomes spiritual food. You partake of it, and it attracts you to Krishna. It attracts you to Prabhupada. It opens you up to understand more, you know. And so that's and the wonderful thing. There's no prerequisite. We were just discussing this morning this verse from the second canto. Kirata hunanda pulinda pulkasha abira shamba javana kashadaya. Yenye cha papa yadapasha yashaya shuddhanti tasmai prabha vishnave namaha. This is Shukadeva Goswami. He has this whole series of prayers before he starts describing in detail the Bhagavatam to Maharaj Pariksit, those who know the story, you know. So this is one of them, the most famous one Prabhupada would quote. It's a list of people who are outside the Vedic culture. Who were, you know, this was spoken 5,000 years ago. These are you know, people who live in what was then Europe or Africa or, you know, far out of India, you know. It's a list. And some of them, that's the word kasha. I'd like to tell the story because I worked on this book called the Vyasa Puja book every year. Some of you have seen it. You know, in honor of Srila Prabhupada, devotees write homages. This year was the first year in like 30 years I wasn't directly involved. But when I was doing that, you know, in China, there's devotees in China. But the ability to practice Krishna consciousness openly varied according to the regime. Back in the 80s, there was a little democratic thing going on there. And we were able to do Harinam out in the parks and the streets, you know, and everything like that. But then it clamped down again. And they were able to, you know, go into the homes and things, you know, because they weren't political. So at that point, they said, oh, don't say the offering is from China, because we put, you know, this is from China, San Diego, whatever. Oh, this is Beijing. Don't put that. Put Kasha Des. Kasha is the word in this verse indicating the Chinese, who were outside the Vedic culture. You know, they're outside of India. You know. So the point is that this is applicable for everyone all over the world. This is a list of people outside the Vedic culture. Some in Europe, you know, in China, all the, and it says it doesn't matter. They and other sinful people, Papa, if they take shelter of one who has taken shelter of Krishna, you see, the Acharya, then they can become purified. Purified of these tendencies to rebel against Krishna, to have sense gratification, to forget God, and to basically sink down to the animal platform. You know, you can be purified of that and be empowered to control the lower self by the higher self. That's what's being described here. The intelligence is strengthened by hearing and practicing, by hearing and chanting the holy name, by hearing this and by practicing. And then the intelligence, and then you can say to the senses, no, I'm not going to do that. I have the urge to do it, but I know that's self-destructive, that's not going to help me. And I've also got this relationship with this guru, which I promised not to do it, so I'm not going to do it. And after a while you find, oh, the impetus to do it decreases. You're able to, vairagya comes, because you're becoming more attracted to Krishna and Krishna's service and Krishna's devotees and everything related to Krishna. And ultimately, it's like you're with Krishna in your mind consciously at all times, even in sleep, and you're enjoying bliss and greater bliss. You'll never come down below the bliss. You know, you're always happy because you're plugged into that reservoir of pleasure within your heart. This is what's so amazing. There's a little pamphlet called The Reservoir of Pleasure, and Krishna's in our heart as a super soul. Something he'll manifest sometimes as Shyama Sundar. Brahma Samhita is so beautiful. Premanjana Chudita Bhakti Vilochane. This is Lord Brahma, you know, is hymns to Krishna. Premanjana Chudita Bhakti Vilochanena Santa Sadaiva Hridayeshu Vilokayanti. Yang Shama Sundara Machinduguna Swarupam Govindamari Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. It's such a, this last line is repeated. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord. Govinda Adi Purusham. But this verse says, those who have covered their eyes with the salve of love, of prema anjana chudita bhakti, they always see the beautiful form of Shyama Sundar in their heart. You see, in any circumstance. And you can imagine how wonderful it is to see the deities, to always be able to see the deity within your heart. And so that means you're always enjoying transcendental bliss. In any circumstance. You know, even like Prahlad Maharaj, we're reading now in seventh canto. It's a very important canto in the morning we just started. And he was a little boy, but he was a highly accomplished bhakti yogi. And even though his father was a big demon, he's this little child, and his father, Hiranyakashipu, was trying to train him, you know, to be another demon. But he was already been trained by Narada Muni to be a great devotee while he was in the womb. And so he was fearless before his father. Here's this delicate little boy, 5 years old, and his father was this huge, monstrous demon, Hiranyakashipu, who performed austerities to become even more powerful, and everyone in the universe was afraid of him, except Prahlad. And he asked his son, he has no idea that he was trained while in the womb. You know, he thinks that he's being trained in the school, by his demonic teachers. What's the best thing you learned today, Prahlad? You know, he took him on his lap, smelled his head, and this is a standard affection. So Prahlad says, this is the first thing, time. Tat sadhamanye asodabharya dehinam sada samudvigna dhyam asadgrahat hitvatpapatam griyam andakupam vanam gato yad hadamashriyeta. Now this chapter that we're reading, it's harking back to the third canto, when we heard how Hiranyaksha, who's the brother of Hiranyakashipu, was killed by an incarnation of Krishna called Varaha, the boar. So this is telling how Hiranyakashipu was just enraged that his brother had been killed, and so he's you know, his arch enemy is Lord Krishna, or Hari, because he had killed his brother in that form of the boar. Hare Krishna, welcome. You can sit there. So, page 124. And so the last thing he wants to hear from his son is anything devotional, and he doesn't expect it. How could he be? He's just been trained by Kṛṣṇa and Marka, the demonic teachers. So what's the best thing you learned today? Just like a father wants to know, gets to get a report card or something. So he says this verse. The word sadhu, by the way, means a sadhu person, or it can mean very good. It can be something, just mean wonderful. So he says, Tat sadhu manye. In my opinion, the best thing I learned today, and he doesn't call him father, he calls him best of the demons. Asura varya. Best for whom? Best for the embodied soul, dehinam. That's who we are. It's best for all of us. Tat sadhu asura varya dehinam, who are suffering sada samudvigna diyam asadgrahat. Samudvigna diyam means very disturbed consciousness, because we're holding fast for dear life to what's impermanent. Just like we're sitting next to the Pacific Ocean here, right? So imagine you go out on a boat, not a big boat, but a fishing boat, a little boat, a leisure boat, and it springs a leak, right? So immediately your mind becomes disturbed. Oh, I could die here, So, but luckily there's a nice set of life preservers. So you have to jump, the boat is sinking, so you jump on the life preserver, and you're waiting, and you got on your cell phone, you call the guards or whatever it is, and they're coming, But the life preserver is leaking. You're in that boat, you're out 5 miles from the shore, you can't swim. And what you have taken shelter of, that life preserver, is failing. That's the sadasamudvigna diyam asadgrahat. Asadgrahat means grabbing onto, taking shelter of what is impermanent. Asat. This body, right? We're taking shelter of the body right now, and we're taking shelter of the home and the car and the bank account and all the other relationships. Insurance policies, very important. But they're all fallible. It's all asat. There's no shelter. There's no way of warding it off. So therefore, he says, it's always disturbed. So what's the solution? Hitvatnapatam, griham, andakupam. Andakupam means a blind well of materialistic family life. There's also spiritual family life, which is not a blind well. But a blind well means you think you have shelter here, you're planning ahead, but it's all doomed. So he's telling his father, the only way to get rid of this constant anxiety that bad stuff is going to happen, which it will, is to give up this blind well of materialistic family life and go to the forest. What forest? Vrindavan. It's implied, it's understood. Griyamandakupam, the blind well of and vanam gato, go to the vana, that Vrindavana. Vana means forest. Vanam gato yad, and punchline, haramashrayeta, take shelter of Hari, take shelter of Krishna. The last thing Hiranyakasipu wanted to hear. Now, he's got his little boy on his hand, on his lap, and he can't blame him because, the teachers, so he's looking at the teachers. And he's conquered the universe. This is a big demon here. And he's looking at Kṛṣṇa and Marka, those are the tutors, He said, we didn't teach him that. We don't know anything. But don't worry, he's just a little boy. We'll get it out of him. They couldn't get it out of him. And Prahlad eventually is teaching his friends. There's a whole chapter where what he teaches his friends, all about Krishna consciousness. So that's the last thing Hiranyakasipu wants, is sedition. It's one thing to have your son be a bad apple, but now he's creating more bad apples. So anyway, he tries to kill him, but instead he's killed by Nrsimhadev. You know the story. Okay, we may have gone a little far afield. Any questions, comments? It's all about controlling the lower self by the higher self, controlling the senses as the tortoise is able to withdraw its milk. So this is key. He's describing here those who are pragya pratishtita. This is a phrase that will come up in each of the, it was in the last verse, it's going to be in the next verse. Fixed consciousness, to fix your mind so that it's not, up and down, but rather you're fixed on what needs to be done in order to advance in devotional service. That's what's being described. And the next verse is very important. We've kind of ran out of time. If you have a quick question, go ahead. And then we'll have an appropriate poem.
So I see in the original Bhagavad Gita, thank you for the class, by the way, the original Bhagavad Gita in 1972, it says, at the end here, is to be understood as truly situated in knowledge. And then I see, and this one says, is firmly fixed in perfect consciousness. The translation is the same, but I just wanted to get from, I guess, straight from the horse's mouth what the
you're saying the translation is the same, but you just read a difference.
No, I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, the word for word is the same, but the translation is somewhat different. But I just wanted to understand from you, like, what was the determining factor?
And what was the other translation?
So the original 72 is to be understood as truly situated in knowledge, whereas this one is firmly fixed in perfect consciousness. I mean, it's pretty much the same. But
yeah, and if you know, I don't know exactly. I'd have to look at it carefully and compare. But it's possible that the first editor, you know, he used, and Prabhupada said he could do this to some degree, is that he could use other Gitas to get ideas, especially for the translations. He says what's really important is the purports. Because this book, you know, it wasn't easy to put this together. There was no one who was expert in Sanskrit in the movement, you know, except Prabhupada, of course. But, and so he kept coming to Prabhupada with questions about the translation because, you know, he couldn't understand the English, he couldn't understand some of the terms, all that was going on. So finally, Prabhupada said, don't worry about the translations so much. You know, you can use, and there's so many English translations, they're basically okay, but what's really important is the purports. So he may have taken that phrase from another translation. But this one, I'll look it up, you know, and I'll see, and I can answer it tomorrow if you're exactly what happened there, you know, what that changed. And you'll find them, various things like that throughout, you know. And but just a word on that, because that comes up all the time. Srila Prabhupada, you know, the most difficult thing was finding trustworthy editors, you know, who were capable of working on this at this time. With all the deficits, they were unfamiliar with the language, with the philosophy, you know, it was hard. So he had some people who he was relying on, but eventually, over the course of his 12 years with us, he came to rely and trust Jayadvaita Swami the most. He wrote a letter concerning the editing. Whatever Jayadvaita does, I have confidence in him, you know. And he was the one who revised this Gita based on the one that you're reading there. And there were all kinds of things that he used for that. Prabhupada's original, what did Prabhupada actually say? What does the Sanskrit say? When we had access by then to Baladev Vidyabhushan's commentary, which Prabhupada relied on for this, you know. So there's all these factors that went into, you know, the revision. And if you'd like to know the details, we're actually going over the Bhagavad Gita, myself and some other experienced editors. There's an editorial board, and then there's an editorial review board, a review panel, that's reviewing all of these revisions that you're talking about. So we're ironing those things out now. All right, just one little verse I remembered. This is based on a verse by Lord Rishabdev, who is a great, he's actually an incarnation of Krishna. And he spoke in the 5th canto, very, very memorable verses. And the first, when he was speaking, when he was beginning to speak, that verse, Prabhupada gave at least 12 classes on it in India. He was in India, he was traveling, wherever he went, he gave class on that verse. So this verse I'm going to give you is based on that. And it's an English verse. And it says, don't waste this precious human life, dear friend, by working hard for hoggish happiness. Through bhakti yoga, worldly life transcend and learn to taste divine love's endless bliss. So that's the choice we have as a human being. That's the choice that Prabhupada gave us by introducing all this knowledge. So we should take it. And these verses, there's a whole series of them that we're just reading now. And they're all telling us how we can fix our consciousness and become strong, so that, and fix our intelligence, so that we can, as Prabhupada described here, the do's and the don'ts, so that we can embrace the do's and reject the don'ts. And soon we'll find ourselves happily on the path to Krishna consciousness. All right, let's get ready for Kirtan and wonderful darshan of Radha Giridhari. Glories to Srila Prabhupada.